I'm Andrew Dalton. I'm here with Tim Smith. And yep, it looks like we're all good now. So we're still learning about our new system. We're in our new event center on our stage, and all this technology is a bit overwhelming at times. It was a very detailed installation where all kinds of parts have to come together and work all the time, and we're not nearly smart enough to understand all of the problems that it has, especially when the power goes out, right? That's when we really have problems. So is your mic on?
Yep.
I think it is. Good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us. We got some people, over a dozen people watching already. Hopefully we'll have others join as we go. But we just wanted to give a little bit of an update on some of the programs that are going on, some of the things that are happening here at the Historical Society and at the museum. We're so happy that many of you have come out and visited the museum already. We've had, I think, over 10,000 visitors in just less than 2 months, which is phenomenal. And we're well beyond what we expected initially. So that's just very encouraging and exciting. And we have wonderful speakers coming for the anniversary. And before we took a break, I asked Tim to talk about the anniversaries that he remembers. Of course, my first Battle of Gettysburg anniversary that I really remember was the 150th. Of course, there was a lot going on then. And it's hard to believe 10 years has passed, and we have come a long way in the past 10 years. Do you remember the 150th? What were you doing 10 years ago? Did you have any special programs?
The 150th anniversary. I think that is where Gary and I gave a program at the amphitheater. And I think the program might have been on the changing battlefield.
There you go.
And I also remember, was that the anniversary where the keynote speaker, who was the keynote speaker?
It was, I think Doris Kearns-Goodwin was here, right?
Doris Kearns-Goodwin, that's correct.
Yep.
And she spoke about her, she didn't speak about Team Arrivals, if I remember correctly. She spoke about her work on her biography of Truman.
Right.
And I do remember that Gary Edelman, we were together during that ceremony, and he was excited because one of his friends did Star Spangled Banner.
Oh, yes, right? Trace Adkins?
Yeah, Trace Adkins was there.
A big friend of Civil War and Gettysburg history.
I was pretty close to the stage during that event. And, it's interesting to me. I don't know if I get more excited because it's a bigger anniversary like the 150th as opposed to like the 149th. I'm not one of those people that thinks like just because there's a zero on it that the anniversary is more important. It's just, to me, the whole concept seems a little ridiculous. But when people think it's a bigger anniversary, we definitely get more attention here at Gettysburg, and the normal everyday things we do with people. A lot more people are interested in it, I should say.
Absolutely, yeah. And Phil Spoggy commented last March of the Iron Brigade. It was epic.
Oh,
you remember that?
I kind of remember that. They went from the Kadori farm across the fields of Pickett's Charge like they did on the morning of July 1st. And out, across the seminary and down into McPherson's Woods.
Right, and we're very excited because we've kind of been adding things to the landscape around our building, but we now have a cannon on our front lawn.
Yeah.
So we will be hopefully firing that cannon to ring in the 160th on the morning of July 1st. We do our buildings right next to a nursing home, so we do need to let everyone know that we will be firing the cannon, that there's nothing to be alarmed about, but and maybe you'll even be able to help us fire the cannon. That's what we're working towards. So, but we're looking off towards Barlow Knoll on the battlefield, or Blockers Knoll, and it's just a beautiful venue. We hope you'll come out and be here for that. But in the meantime, we should point out that every single weekend, Tim gives free programs here at the Historical Society. And what are you doing this upcoming weekend?
We have been doing these programs, on Saturdays and Sundays, free to the public. Usually, of course, you have to check the schedule because there are some alterations if we have a different set of programs or an event. But on Saturday, we usually have a program at 1 o'clock. And on Sunday, we usually give a program at 11 o'clock. And I've actually gotten, as the few months have gone by since we're open, a pretty loyal group of people that comes to the programs. So this Saturday at 1 p.m., I'm doing a program called John Burns, the Hero of Gettysburg. Of course, I wrote a book about John Burns, so it's an easy subject for me to talk about. And I always have something a little bit new to say about him, something maybe my latest discovery on him we'll talk about. But basically it's, about the 69-year-old citizen of the Gettysburg who ran out and fought in the battle and joined in the fighting on July 1st, and his life and how that event affected his life.
And that night we have a program with Jared Frederick, the historian Jared Frederick, who's he's going to be speaking about Harper's Ferry and the Civil War, which should be really fascinating. I'm sure many of you watching have been to Harper's Ferry, and I've always wanted to learn more about that, so I'm really excited about what he's going to talk about. That's called Embattled Borderland, Harper's Ferry and the Crisis of the Civil War. And that'll be 7 p.m. on Saturday, June 17th. There's still some tickets available on our website, so we hope you'll come to that. We also have his books here, so you can come out and have a book signing. He wrote a book about the battlefield landscape and its changes over time. So that's Saturday, this Saturday, the 17th. And then you have a program Sunday, I think at 11, Witnessing Lincoln. What's that one about?
Yeah, I do a program about Abraham Lincoln and his Gettysburg Address from the perspective of the local people who were here and witnessed it and wrote about it later. So it's basically about how Lincoln spent the 25 hours that he was in town over November 18th and November 19th, 1863.
And your estimate of 25 hours, where does that come from? Is that a...
That comes from the schedule. It's something creative I came up with. The train that arrived about 6 p.m. on November 18th, dropped him off at the train station, and he left about 7 p.m. on the 19th. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Instead of 24 hours, he spent 25 hours.
That is very Tim Smith to have a 25th hour that must be added. To be unique. Well, that's great. There's a lot of people joining. I see Estella and Thomas, and of course Phil's here. Cliff, Kathy. Thank you guys for joining us. It's nice to do this. We'll probably do this more now that we finally figured out the technology. We've been in here a couple months, and now we understand how to turn the microphones on and get on Facebook. And we've gotten over a little hurdle at the beginning of this broadcast. So that's this weekend. And then next weekend, it looks like you're also going to give another program that is a new program that we haven't given. It's a free program on Saturday. Is that right, the 24th?
Yes, and that one will be called Roads to Gettysburg. And it's basically about the fact that 10 roads intersect at this town, and that was the major reason the battle was fought here. And I talk a little bit about the development of the road hub and where each of the roads leads to.
Yeah, and that's wonderful. It looks like we're doing a lot of new programs. We try to, we have, of course, Tim could probably give 100 different programs, so we're trying to cycle through his favorite programs. And then on the 25th, Treasures from Beyond the Battle.
And that's mostly a program about the different things that are in our collection downstairs that we've placed on display in our new museum.
That's great. And someone's asking, Estella's asking, what time is Tim's talk on Sunday about Lincoln? And I think that's, is that 11? 11 a.m. Mm-hmm. That's great. Hope we can see you then. We have a lot of things coming up in the next, of course, this is a very, very busy 2 weeks for us, but we hope you'll come out to as many of the programs as you can make it to. Those are all free that we mentioned, free and open, no ticket required. And that gets into the schedule for the 160th, which we are just so excited about. And so I'll get right into that. And so June 26th, which I think did we skip over that, or no. That's right after. So June 26th at 1 o'clock, you're doing a program on a let's say real-time program. Is that not the phrase that the Park Service uses? Real-time.
Because it's on the same day.
Same time, same day.
So
Jubal Early's Raid.
So basically, I'm going to talk about the events of June 26th, 1863, the Friday prior to the battle, where the Southern Army moves into our town for the first time.
That's great. Yeah, I know I've seen you do that program before, and we have a lot of artifacts in the museum related to Jubal Early's Raid. We really enjoyed writing that part of the museum, so you'll have to check that out. We have a Confederate flag that was stitched together by a local family to, I guess, avoid having their house ransacked and robbed by the Confederates, and we also have some Confederate money handed out or used as currency locally. To pay for lunch or dinner cooked by, I think, a grandmother in Cashtown. Is that right? And then what else do we have in that? We have some relics from Thaddeus Stevens.
From Thaddeus Stevens Ironworks, which was destroyed by the Confederates when they left, Caledonia Furnace. And it was either done the day before the early morning of June 26th.
Right. Oh, that's fantastic. So that's June 26th. And then on June 29th in the evening, Carolyn Ivanoff is going to speak about her new book, We Fought at Gettysburg, about the 17th Connecticut, which fought right outside our window. We can, I think, see their monument if I strain my neck a little bit.
Yep,
but that should be really fascinating, 17th Connecticut. And, what better place to have a program about the fighting on Barlow's Knoll than the only place in Gettysburg where you can sit inside and look out the window and see Barlow's Knoll. And one thing, I like to point out little obscure things about the building that a lot of visitors might not notice, but in the back of the room here, we actually have a small exhibit about Barlow's Knoll with some artifacts that we found during the construction of the building. I think that was your idea, Tim, to decorate the room a little bit with some of the history of the view.
And on the 30th, which really gets into the anniversary of the battle, and what, off the top of my head, what's the 30th? What day is that? Is that
the first is a Saturday, so the 30th is a Friday.
Okay. So we have at 10 a.m. a book signing with Jeff Shara, one of our good friends who actually wrote the dialogue for our Caught in the Crossfire experience.
Right, and we have Jeff's new book, too, Old Lion, about Teddy Roosevelt. So you can buy that in our gift shop and have it signed by Jeff at probably one of the first. He's just started doing the book signings for that book, and I just got my copy. I'm excited to start reading it. That's 10 a.m. And then 1 p.m. we have Children of the Battlefield with Sue Boardman and Sue and Abby Hoffman as well on our staff. They're going to talk about some of the stories that we have related to young people who witnessed the battle at different various locations all around the area. So that'll be wonderful. Again, everything up until everything we've mentioned so far is totally free. You don't need a ticket. It's open to the public. And then you're doing, I think, one of your favorite programs, right? 7 p.m. on Friday night, June 30th. And again, this is totally free, open to the public. You don't have to get a ticket. It's Prelude to Battle. What are you going to talk about in that program?
Well, I think the program will be about the events that occurred on June 30th, 1863, the day before the battle actually started. And, the program will focus on the movements of John Buford's Cavalry Division as it came over the mountain from Monterey to Fairfield, and then eventually to Gettysburg, where they saw a grand welcome here by the Gettysburg citizens. The Union Army moving into Littlestown, Pennsylvania, the Confederate Army breaking their advance towards the Pennsylvania capital and the Susquehanna River and marching back into this direction. And just a little bit about the atmosphere the night before the battle started.
Right. Do you think the Confederates had a shot at taking Harrisburg?
Well, they have to cross the river. I mean, do I think that the Pennsylvania militia is going to stop them? No. But there's some
you're usually much softer on the Pennsylvania militia, especially the local militia.
Yeah, but they would have to burn. They probably would have had to burn the bridge at Harrisburg too, like they did at.
And I think I have to point out, this is a little bit of a side note, but Joseph Broadhead is one of the local men who's in the. I don't even know if is it a real militia unit, but he helped fell the trees on the approach to Gettysburg. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, in our Washington Post article, or maybe it was National Geographic, they mentioned one-eyed Joseph Broadhead, or blind in one eye, and that he felled the trees to stop the Confederates with his one good eye. And that's the type of story I think we didn't put that in the museum thinking it would make it into a big news story, but sometimes these little things are curiosities. And if you have any questions for Tim, he's so busy these days that it's a rare opportunity to get him for a few minutes sitting down and answering questions. So if you have questions, I'm trying to watch the chat here. There's quite a few people putting comments in the chat. So if you have a question for Tim, just type it in there and I will ask it to him. And we won't be filtering any of the questions. We'll give him every question we get. But anyway, continuing on the schedule, that gets into July 1st, which is our big day. We have a lot going on July 1st. Saturday, July 1st, it should be a very busy day. And at 10 a.m., again, we have Jeff Shara here signing books, which is wonderful. You can meet him and talk to him. We have almost all of his books, I think, in the gift shop. And he also, you might not know this, but he signs copies of the Killer Angels in honor and in memory of his father. So that's quite a souvenir to have a signed copy of the Killer Angels from Jeff with a note. And I think he writes in every single one, for my father. So that's just so you know, if you're looking for a good Christmas gift, that would be something you could get while you're here. But on July 1st, Jeff's here in the morning, and then I should mention, too, all day on July 1st and July 2nd. We haven't really talked about this yet on Facebook, but we probably will in the next week. But our friends from the West Point Museum are bringing some of the rarest Gettysburg artifacts in their collection to Gettysburg. We haven't gotten a final list, but it is really amazing stuff. If you go onto Gary Edelman's Civil War page, I think he's teased it a little bit, but these are going to be things that you'd never see. They're from, I think, I don't even know if these items are on display at West Point, but they're items that belong to important people, mostly generals who fought at Gettysburg, and they'll be bringing them here. They'll be downstairs, totally free. You can come out and see these artifacts, and we're excited West Point is going to partner with us on that. All right, 1 o'clock on July 1st, I'm going to speak about the fighting at Willoughby's Run and some of the civilians that lived in the neighborhood of Willoughby's Run. I'm glad I saw that because I need to put that PowerPoint together for my program. But, of course, Willoughby's Run is close to my heart. I grew up right near Willoughby's Run, so we'll be talking about the first day of the battle and kind of the mixture of civilian and soldier accounts that we have. And then in the afternoon, 3 p.m., you're going to speak with Eric Dorr about the Peffers. You want to tell us a little bit about the Peffers?
So Eric Dorr's grandfather was a Peffer, and his grandfather lived here at the time of the battle. And the program is going to discuss their family and their events that occurred around their house during the battle, and the fact that that family, like several other families in the area, collected artifacts from the battlefield after the fighting was over. And Eric has a huge collection of items that came directly from his family members pertaining to the battle.
Right. Well, that'll be fascinating. You think he's bringing any artifacts?
I do
we'll
not
have to
know.
ask him. Maybe we'll ask him now.
But we'll have pictures of artifacts, and we'll have discussion of how they were found.
Right. That's excellent. And then we cap off our day on July 1st with a really great panel discussion. It's called From Gettysburg to Normandy and Beyond. And this one is, there's a lot of interest in this, so there is a ticket you got to get through our website. There's still some tickets left, not a whole lot, but there are some left. And it's called From Gettysburg to Normandy and Beyond, the Next Generation of History on YouTube. And we have a really great group of people. In fact, I don't think some of these folks have never done live in-person events before. They're more famous on YouTube, like J.D. Hewitt, our good friend, and Chris Mowry. They run the 2 different YouTube pages that have gained a ton of attention in recent years. JD's page is The History Underground. Chris's page is Vlogging Through History. You might recognize them if you see their pictures. They're probably the 2 biggest history influencers on YouTube. And they'll be joined by Gary Edelman and Chris White of the American Battlefield Trust, who the 2 of them have also contributed immeasurably over the past few years to the body of the wealth of videos and information that's now available online through YouTube and Facebook and other platforms. So they're going to talk about some of their adventures and what they hope to do in future years and how they're connecting with people through YouTube and through history and traveling around and visiting historic sites. So that'll be in this room. We expect a big crowd, so if you haven't already gotten tickets to that, you can go to our website. It's achs-pa.org or gettysburgbeyondthebattle.org, and you can get tickets to that. Of all these programs, I think only 3 of them are ticketed. We tried to make as many as we could free and totally open. You don't need a ticket. But for 3 of them, we do have a ticket just because there's so much interest in these programs that we wanted to limit in some way the not having 500 or 600 people trying to get into this room. We wish we had built a bigger room in hindsight, I think. What about July 2nd, Tim? You want to talk about July 2nd?
July 2nd, I'm doing a program at 11 a.m. called The Rocks of Gettysburg. And basically it's about the geology of Gettysburg and the rocks and how the rocks impacted the battle, and also how the rocks that were here at the time are still here, and how over the years people have carved their initials or names in them, and some rocks have gained notoriety because photographs were recorded of them after the battle, and they were given names because of certain events that occurred around them. So it's a little bit about the rocks themselves, and I've always been obsessed with the rocks, and just a little bit about the history of the area and the rocks.
We have some questions. First, I'm going to ask you, other than Devil's Den, do you have a favorite rock formation at Gettysburg?
Oh, A favorite rock formation. Well, I've always liked the rocks on Big Round Top. On the very top of the summit of the hill, there's some caves on just near the summit on the side of the hill, and I've spent a lot of time in those particular rock formations. I also am particularly fond of Rock Creek, of walking along through the creek amongst the rocks there.
Right. And the Sphinx, of course, which is no longer looking like it did.
That'll be in the slideshow.
Yeah, wonderful. You'll have to come to that. So Tim is doing that at 11 a.m. on July 2nd, Sunday, July 2nd, the Rocks of Gettysburg. That's free, open to the public. Hope you'll come out for that one. So I have a few questions. There's 3 or 4, so you can do your best to answer them quickly so we can keep going with the program. So Rick is asking, as the armies moved through the county in the prelude to the battle, what effect did they have on the farmers and families in the surrounding towns? Destroyed property, confiscated animals, etc.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting dilemmas here, for both the locals and the armies, is the Northern Army had been in Virginia for 2 years. And, if they wanted a chicken, they just went over and stole it from the Southern farmer. I mean, really, they were in rebellion against the United States anyway. What's it matter if they destroyed their property or burned all their rail fences up? What's it matter? So and obviously, that when Robert E. Lee invaded Pennsylvania, he had issued orders to his men to be on their best behavior. Now, we know they took horses and destroyed farms and, took stuff from barns and, did a lot of damage. But when the Northern Army came into Pennsylvania, for them was business as usual. They camped, massive amounts of men camped in people's fields and tore down all the farmers' fences and destroyed their crops. They set, thousands of animals loose in their fields. And then for years, the local farmers tried to be compensated by the local government for their damages. And unfortunately for the citizens, the opinion of the federal government was, what are you, not patriotic? I mean, these soldiers are here to defend your property. I mean, maybe they have to destroy it, in the process, but that's just the way it is. And so I think over the years too, books that have been written on the battle sort of question, a good example, George Patterson. George Patterson lives on the Emmitsburg Road, just as you cross the Pennsylvania line from Maryland into Pennsylvania in what is Freedom Township. But George Patterson's property was horribly destroyed, and he comes running out and tries to talk to some of the commanders of the units. Robinson's division was camped all over his property, and there's a reporter there. And the reporter writes a nasty article about him in the Philadelphia newspaper after the battle about how he's asking the general, for a receipt for destroying his property. Of course, after the war, he doesn't get compensated for any of this, but I want to point out that his wife does give birth to a child, and he names him George Meade Patterson.
So he was patriotic after all.
So, I think it's just ridiculous to question these people's patriotism because the Northern Army's damaged their property. That's a long answer to a short question.
That's a great question. We virtually none of these people received money for their claims. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it's tough. It's tough. Obviously, a battle is tough for the soldiers that are fighting in the battle.
Sure. And
a lot of them lose their lives. But, this area was devastated by the battle as well. A lot of people are affected by it.
A couple other questions. Is Tim going to do another Things That Bother Me video? The first one was really entertaining.
Really? I'm glad to hear that, because there are lots and lots and lots and lots of things that bother me.
That would be great. Every day we're hearing about the things that bother Tim.
Yeah, and I'm sure...
Most of them should not be said in a Facebook Live video.
I'm sure ghosts will not be mentioned.
We will say the former director of the Adams County Historical Society was never afraid to call out an individual business or organization for saying something that was not historically accurate. And I think, Tim, if we could just let him off the leash, he would go out and talk about all these things that he reads and sees that aren't right. That we try to be we try to be diplomatic.
We try to be good neighbors.
Yes, we try to be good neighbors. A couple other questions. Someone's asking if you've ever thought about doing a program on the invasion of Mechanicsburg in June 1863.
Wow, that's fascinating. Mechanicsburg specifically.
I think somebody from Mechanicsburg.
I think
that's a nice question.
Maybe Jim Schmick.
Yeah, there's it's Thomas Hassel.
Okay.
Thank you for the question, Thomas.
But Jim Schmick has a little bookstore there, Civil War and More, in Mechanicsburg, and he actually does programs on that subject. And although I am very interested in the fighting, up there near Harrisburg, around Sporting Hill, for instance, and the whole episode of Milroy, riding across the bridge in Harrisburg during the war, I don't think I've ever given any kind of programs in that area, so
Wow.
Probably not.
Wow. Great. So one last question, then we'll get back to the schedule. This is a good one. Keith is asking, who made the biggest impact on you or was an inspiration to you during your career?
Oh, I think early on it had to be William Frasito.
Sure.
William Frasito, when I met him when I was a kid, I met him just after I think his Antietam book came out. But I had read his Gettysburg book. I went to the book show, the GBPA book show early on. I think I hung out with him a little bit there after Grant and Lee was written. And then eventually I moved to the town, and Fraz we just started hanging out, and I guess I became a protege of his, or he was my mentor. So and beyond that, people like Charles Gladfelter, who was a longtime historian here at the Adams County Historical Society, had a big impact on me. And then I became a licensed battlefield guide, and virtually just the knowledge of that group of people, the licensed battlefield guides, from people like Wayne Motts, Jim Klaus, Dave Richards, Charlie Fennell. I mean, I'm sure I could go on. There's lots of older guides that were still around when I was there that had given tours to some of the veterans of the battle. And,
Wow.
just talking to them on a daily basis at the park was just inspirational for me.
That's great. Yeah, and that's a great segue into the rest of our schedule for July 2nd, because it includes Bill Frasito. So you're speaking at 11 about the Rocks of Gettysburg, which we already talked about. That, again, is free, no ticket required. And at 1 o'clock, we have a program with Cindy Small about the life and death of Jenny Wade, which I know is a topic that you're very passionate about. Cindy will also be signing her book about Jenny Wade. And then in the evening, we have a book signing starting at 4 p.m. with William A. Frasito and Sue Boardman. And then at 7, we have a program about the Rose Farm with Bill Frasito and Sue. It's called The Rose Farm, A Photographic Mystery Solved. And that is ticketed. There are tickets available on our website right now. We're really excited about this program, and we have a little bit of a surprise that we haven't talked about yet that we expect will... the remaining tickets will probably sell quickly once we start talking about this, sending out an email about it. But there is a photograph, and we probably shouldn't give the whole thing away, but there is a photograph taken in Gettysburg in 1863 that just came to light recently that has never been published, and only a few people have ever seen it. It was a surprise to Bill Frasito, to Gary Edelman and Tim, to pretty much everyone, and it's a photograph that, and we're not going to tell you what the photograph's of, but it's very rare. I would say it's quite rare when an 1863 image from Gettysburg comes to light. Maybe in your lifetime, Tim, maybe a dozen or so, or more, or something.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say once every few years you see a new photograph. Sure.
So this is something where we will likely have the original photograph here on display for you to see. And in addition, we'll show the photograph for the first time, and Bill Frasito will talk about the image. So we hope you will come out and see that. We're going to send out an email about that shortly, just so everyone's aware of our little surprise that we've been keeping secret about this image. But we'll have some great historians here to talk about it. Bill Frasito, Sue Boardman, and Bob Zeller and Gary Edelman will be here briefly to make the announcement.
And we should point out that for those of you who can't be here for some of these programs, especially the programs in the day, I guess are we live streaming the programs?
Yes, we'll be live streaming all of our programs, almost all. I'm not sure if we'll live stream the ticketed programs.
Yeah.
But we'll probably release those later.
You might have to wait till later to see those.
But most of them will be, so you can check our YouTube page.
All these videos will be available on our YouTube page afterwards.
That's right. And then on July 3rd, I'm very, very excited about this program. It's almost sold out, but I think there's maybe 20 tickets left. Stephen Lang Goes Beyond the Battle. So that's 10 a.m. on Monday, July 3rd. Of course, who better to have here on July 3rd, the 160th anniversary of the battle, the 160th anniversary of Pickett's Charge, than acclaimed actor Stephen Lang, who played George Pickett in the movie Gettysburg, who played Stonewall Jackson in the movie Gods and Generals, who plays the villain Captain Quaritch, I think, in Avatar. I apologize. I'm sure he's not listening, but if I mispronounced that. And most importantly, perhaps to us, who graciously narrated every single film in our museum. The wonderful, talented, generous, kind actor Stephen Lang will be here on July 3rd at 10 a.m. He'll be speaking on stage with Jake Borrett, a frequent collaborator and close friend of the Historical Society. And before that, we'll be screening the Gettysburg Story, which Jake and Stephen Lang did in 2013, 10 years ago. So it's the 10-year anniversary of the release. And you may know the Gettysburg Story uses drone footage and time-lapse footage and other incredible elements to kind of tell the story of the battle in a way that had never been told before. So we hope you'll come out for that, the screening plus the discussion. That starts at 10. It'll be 10 to about noon, and we're expecting to have a lively discussion. Stephen Lang is very entertaining and loves Gettysburg and loves being part of things like this, so we can't wait to have him here. You could get tickets for that on our website. So that's July 3rd. And the last thing that day, we have a book signing with Dr. Bradley M. Gottfried, whose books are in our gift shop. He's a good friend of ours. He'll be signing at 2 p.m. At 3 p.m., we'll be dedicating the replica darkroom wagon that's in front of our building. If Phil Spoggy's still listening, Phil and Amy Spoggy, great friends of ours, graciously arranged for the donation of this Civil War era wagon that we hope to use in many ways over the years. Right now, it is serving as a replica darkroom wagon, Tipton's photo wagon. It's sitting out in front of the building, but we're going to formally dedicate that wagon with Phil and Amy. And so that will be 3 p.m. on July 3rd. And this is something else we probably haven't announced yet, but on July 4th, we're going to be doing a Civil War book sale from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. We did that at our old location a few years in a row, but we have a lot of new books that we just received that we're going to be selling at a very, very reasonable price. A lot of them out of print and hardcover Civil War books that I know they're good because Tim was impressed as he was unboxing these books that we received as a donation to sell at the book sale. And when Tim is impressed by Gettysburg books, you know that they're good Gettysburg books that you will want for your own library. So that'll be 10 to 5 on July 4th.
And there were a lot of other books on other battles that were very, very interesting.
That's right. Yeah, not just Gettysburg. We have a lot of
You
other
know, sitting
titles.
here all this time and looking out the window towards Barlow's Knoll, you know, I can't help but notice that Barlow's Knoll gets almost no visitation.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. Very few cars.
You know, the 11th Army Corps is sort of on the auto tour route. It's an optional part of the tour route, and so a very small percentage of the Gettysburg visitors ride out towards Barlow's Knoll.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's just, you know, it's always been something that doesn't receive the same amount of attention. That, you know, I guess people learn a little bit about the opening of the battle, the first day of the battle, then they want to get on to the main event at Little Round Top and Pickett's Charge. And so, you know, the 11th Corps always gets shortchanged on the first day's field. Also, looking out the window, I had to tell you that, and Andrew, if you look at the bottom, the bar that goes across the bottom part of the window, that Howard Avenue and our building are almost perfectly level with each other.
That's something you would notice. You also pointed out that the gaps between the windows are not even, which I did not notice that. But you know, this is basically a big barn that we built here.
Yes,
so
it's really
it's not exactly symmetrical, but that's okay. It kind of adds to the
but
the craftsmanship.
During the anniversary festivities, it doesn't matter where you go, the whole area is crowded.
There's a lot of great things going on. We encourage you to stop by the Visitor Center. Wonderful friends of ours, the Gettysburg Foundation. They have a ton of events going. Yeah. There's events downtown. I'm sure there's things going on at the train station in Gettysburg, which is now run by the foundation, and the town will will be hopping, I'm
Yes,
sure.
the town is
So,
always hopping
yeah.
during the anniversary.
Yeah, and then I'm going to just quickly promote in October, we will be a big part of the 30th anniversary of the movie Gettysburg, October 13th to 15th. We're doing some bus tours. We'll have some of the actors here at our building, and there's a lot of things in the works, including a program with Jeff Shera about his father's legacy and the writing of the Killer Angels. And we're very excited about some of the guests that have been invited. Some have already confirmed, but we're hopeful. I think a majority of the cast of the movie, that's the living members of the cast, will be here in October. So mark your calendars for that as well. But thank you so much for tuning in and for the questions to Tim. We will see a lot of you, I'm sure, in the next couple weeks, and it's just been an honor to see thousands, literally thousands of people come through our doors in just a very short time. And we worked very hard on the museum and these other parts of the building, the research room, the archives. So it's just so nice to be able to share it with all of you. And a reminder, too, our research room is open Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, 10 to 5. And you can research if you're a member for free. If you're not a member, it's just $10 for the day. But we have an incredible repository here, so anyone who's interested in genealogy or researching any topic related to Gettysburg, including the battle, soldiers that fought here, regiments that fought here, we have an incredible amount of research information for you to make use of. So you can come in for that as well, in addition to the museum and the events that we'll be putting on. So we hope you have a good night. I will exit on stage left now to end the video, but thanks for joining us tonight. We hope to see